Hello there everyone, it is Toby from TIJ Music and welcome to a new video. Today we are looking at one of my favourite artists of all time, and that is the Jewish Elvis, Neil Diamond. And today we're going to be looking at the first decade of his career, the 1960s, where he made 5 albums with plenty of good tracks. But today we're going to be going a bit deeper into some of these albums, looking at 10 deep cuts that I recommend that you listen to. Now you might be watching this as someone who really only knows the hits. Sweet Caroline, Solitary Man, Holly Holy, Cherry Cherry, etc, etc. You could, like me, be a bit of a Neil Diamond aficionado. I don't know how to say that word. Big Neil Diamond fan, basically. I've put that in my notes, that word, and I'm not going to say it again, but you kind of know what I mean. And Neil has got such an incredible catalogue of tracks that it is so tricky to just make a list of 10. That's why I'm not going to rank these 10. I'm not going to do a top 10 deep cuts, but just talk about 10 tracks that, in my opinion, are some really good tracks from the first 5 albums that he produced. Now, his first album was The Feel of Neil Diamond, released, I think, in 1966 with Bang Records. And that was an inconsistent album, it's fair to say. It had a few of the hits on it. It had Cherry Cherry. I believe it had a version of Solitary Man and I've Got the Feeling, Oh No No. But really, his second album is the one that you want to look at most. Out of those two, he released for Bang Records because it had a hell of a lot of hits on it. Just For You could very much take as a compilation album. There are a lot of great tracks. Red, Red Wine, Thank the Lord for the Nighttime, Solitary Man, Cherry Cherry, the list goes on. And then after 1966, I think he released both of those albums in 66. Just For You might have been released in 67. He then had a dispute with Bang Records and moved to Uni Records. There, in the 60s at least, he released 3 albums. Velvet Gloves and Spit, Touching You, Touching Me, and Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. Now, Brother Love was actually second, not third. And I have got those 3 albums to show you. Now, I did do a review of this album, Velvet Gloves and Spit, on the channel a few months back, so I'd recommend you go and watch that. I also have Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. This is a bit of a rarer one, actually, and it is certainly a good album. This is probably the most inconsistent out of the 3, I would say, of the Uni Records albums. And I've also got Touching You, Touching Me, his last album of the 60s, released in 69. I've also got this compilation to show you here, Gold Diamond, which has a few of the tracks from the earlier albums that unfortunately I haven't managed to get hold of yet on vinyl because at least Just For You wasn't released in the UK, so it's a bit of a dime to bring that into the country, it's fair to say. But let's get going with 10 Neil Diamond tracks I recommend, and we'll firstly go to the Gold Diamond album. I'm going to do these chronologically. So from album to album, and this one, the track is from The Feel of Neil Diamond, but it is actually track number 4 of side 1, and the track is called I'll Come Running. It was a B-side to Cherry Cherry from The Feel of Neil Diamond, and this is one of Neil Diamond's earliest tracks. It's not his best lyrics, but it's an interesting tempo. It's definitely one of the best picks from his first album. It's fair to say it's quite an inconsistent first album. There are covers of Monday, Monday, a track called Hanky Panky on it. Any other tracks? I don't think so. I think Kentucky Woman might have actually been on it, looking at side 1 there. But it was an inconsistent first album, and there's only going to be one pick from that first album, and it has to be I'll Come Running. Was this track on? Actually, I think this is the only one of the tracks, although we have got a caveat here. I can go to Velvet Gloves and Spit with this track, because the second track we've chosen is Shiloh. And the reason I have chosen this track from Velvet Gloves and Spit, and I can put the album down now, is that this track was actually originally on the album Just For You, his second album. And it was a non-album single, really amazing to be honest. It's one of his best tracks overall, in my opinion. Never mind just a deep cut, it is one of his best tracks overall. And it was re-released for this album, which is a reissue of 1968's Velvet Gloves and Spit, and is track 1 of side 2. And it was a remixed version in 1970 that was released. A more radio-friendly version, but his original is probably the best version, I would say. It's a fantastic storytelling song. I think if I was to rank these 10, this one would definitely be in the top 3. It's a fantastic track. It tells a story about Neil's imaginary childhood friend dealing with loneliness, and it's a track that does feature on Hot August Night, one of it, his big live album. But I don't think it's one that's known so much by non-Neil Diamond mega fans, probably like myself. We then move to track number 3, once again, Velvet Gloves and Spit, but I'm not going to pick the album up. And this track is called Holiday in Blues. This was a B-side to Brooklyn Roads, again, one of Neil Diamond's best tracks of all time. And this is a track about touring and finishing a show and not really having anywhere to unwind, I guess. But it sounds a bit simple, but it's definitely effective. It's one of my favourite Neil tracks from the 60s. It's actually a recent discovery of mine, at least in the last 6 months, from listening to the Velvet Gloves album, reviewing it here on the channel. So I recommend after this video you go and watch that review of that album. But another great track. And track number 4 on the list is another one from this album. However, it was actually a B-side to Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. And that track is called A Modern Day Version of Love. And this is a beautiful track. It's a nice, slow-paced track. And something that I will always talk about when I'm talking about Neil Diamond is how underrated he was how underrated he is as a songwriter. The way he uses lyrics is beautiful, to be honest. It's a brilliant love song, a brilliant, nice, slow-paced track, and definitely worth an addition to the list. And this actually was a non-single for the Velvet Gloves and Spit album. As I said, it was a single, it was a B-side to Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show when that came out in 1970, I think, as a single. The album, of course, released in 69, but the single, I think, in 1970. And then we've got 2 more picks, actually, from Velvet Gloves and Spit. This is a popular album in my choice, and you'll see that from my review that I quite rate this album quite highly. And the penultimate track from this album is Merry Go Round. This was a B-side to And the Grass Won't Pay No Mind, once again from Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. And it's fair to say that Velvet Glove tracks were probably used as B-sides on the Brother Love album singles, because the Brother Love album is a little bit weaker in terms of its deep cuts. We have got 2 tracks which we've chosen from Brother Love, but those are probably some of the better known deep cuts, I would say. I actually listened to Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show this morning. It's certainly a decent album, but maybe compared to Velvet Gloves it's not as good. But more on Merry Go Round. It's a little bit like Holiday in Blues. It's an interesting topic choice here with the whole rich versus poor argument. Its instrumentation is good. It's not one of those tracks that is one of Neil's best, necessarily. The tracks I love from Neil the most are the Shilohs of this world. If we go into the 70s, more sort of the Morningside tracks. The tracks that really, really tell a detailed story. Merry Go Round doesn't do that, but it's a good pop track. And it's a very good track, so I'd recommend you go and listen to it. And for the last one from Velvet Gloves and Spit, we are going with Practically Newborn. And this one is, it's fair to say, a pop track. And funnily enough, when I looked at my Spotify Wrapped stats last year, which if you don't know what that means, in December last year now, in 2020, we now are in 2021, Spotify will show you what you've listened to in the last year, your top artist, etc, etc. Neil Diamond was my top artist on Spotify, and Practically Newborn was actually my top track for Neil Diamond, which blows my mind anyway. It's a little bit too poppy, some would say, but it's a pretty good track for what it sets out to do. It's unique for the album, and therefore probably unique for the 60s as a whole, and does experiment slightly with different sounds. I mean, not as much as Taproot Manuscript did in 1970, but again, it is a very good track. So we're going to put this album away now, say bye to Velvet Gloves and Spit, and we're now going to look at the album which, as I said, it was probably the most inconsistent of the 3 Uni Records albums from the 60s, and this is Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. Now, big tracks from this: Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, the title track, and The Grass Won't Pay No Mind. Also covered by Elvis Presley very well, but you can't beat the original. And the first track I'm going to pick from this album is Glory Road. And I'm shocked this wasn't a single at all. Non-single, certainly wasn't on Wikipedia. It might have been released in a country as a B-side, for example, but it certainly wasn't an A-side. And I am shocked this wasn't a single, and it definitely is worth a mention. It's probably better live on the Love at the Greek album released in the late 70s, but this is the more Shiloh Morningside sound, and it's a song, I think, with 2 meanings potentially. One maybe about touring, but then the other one about the fulfilment of life, and whether this glory road and whether you'll get there really ever exists, and whether you'll achieve what you get to in life. And as the lyric says in the song, you're chasing a new star every day, which suggests that you might have one life goal, but ultimately you keep changing that, and therefore perhaps you might never achieve it. But it's a fantastic song, and is well worth a pick. And I've just realised I've actually skipped one. Poor track, and we'll skip it. Doesn't really... Well, we won't skip it, but we'll do it next. And the penultimate track on this list is Juliet, which is another non-single from Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. It uses the classic 2-verse and 2-chorus structure, and the lyrics aren't really that impressive. But again, it's another nice track. It's another good track to add to the collection. For an artist like Neil, who's got, I think I've probably got 90 tracks of his in my playlist, they all aren't going to be fantastic. but they are good tracks. You do well to find artists, and that's why Neil Diamond is so highly rated by myself, that has so many good tracks. I said that Brother Love was a little bit inconsistent, but they're all decent tracks. There's no cannon fodder on there, I don't think. Juliet, one of the best tracks off that album, I would say, and that's why it deserves a pick in the show. And the final pick is the one and only pick from the Neil Diamond Touching You, Touching Me album. The big single from this album was Holly Holy, and Sweet Caroline was also on this album in the UK. I was going to pick Mr. Bojangles, because I think that Neil does a fantastic version of Mr. Bojangles, but I thought, no, it's not a song written by Neil Diamond. I'll pick a song that Neil wrote. And that song for this one is New York Boy. And it has got that Brother Love vibe, I think. But again, it's another solid track. Obviously, Neil Diamond brought up in New York. And again, it's quite a catchy one, quite a good track. But yeah, Touching You, Touching Me, another good album. As I probably hinted at earlier, I think Velvet Gloves and Spit is the best one of the uni era, at least. I think Just For You has to be number one of the 60s altogether. But Velvet Gloves and Spit, number 2. Probably Touching You, Touching Me, number 3. Brother Love 4. And the first album, The Feel of Neil Diamond, number 5. But that wasn't really an album, that was more of a compilation of tracks, which I guess is an album, but it's not necessarily what Neil Diamond set out to do. So I've also got 4 honourable mentions, which we'll whiz through before the end of the video, and they are You'll Forget, that was a B-side on the Just For You album. The Boat That I Row, famously covered by, what's her name, Lulu. It was a B-side to I Got The Feeling. You're So Sweet, Horseflies Keep Hanging Around Your Face. Bit of a novelty track from Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, but an awesome song nonetheless. And finally, from this album here, And the Singer Sings His Song. I was very tempted to put it in over New York Boy, and on another day, I might well have done. But there's 10 tracks, 10 deep cuts from Neil Diamond's 60s output that are very good, with 4 honourable mentions as well. So just to whiz through them, I'll Come Running, Shiloh, Holiday in Blues, A Modern Day Version of Love, Merry-Go-Round, Practically Newborn, Juliet, Glory Road, and New York Boy. I'm just going to check we've got 10 here, because I wouldn't be surprised if I hadn't done that. I'll tell you what, I haven't actually put in, that's a bit of a stinker. I forgot one. I forgot one. I only did 9. Right, final one. Let's go back in time. I'm glad I checked that. The final one is The Long Way Home from Just For You. This was a B-side to Thank the Lord for the Nighttime. Released actually as a single in 1973 was The Long Way Home in Germany, according to Discogs. But I'm going to ignore that, because this could have been a really big track. It's a faster tempo track again, fairly repetitive with 2 choruses, 2 verses. But it is a good track. It is a good track. And really compounds the strong album Just For You. So there you go, there's your 10th pick. I completely forgot that I'd missed that one, but I have got it now. And there you go. So there's 14 tracks. The Long Way Home is the last one, and the 4 honourable mentions are You'll Forget, The Boat That I Row, You're So Sweet, and The Singer Sings His Song. As I said, Neil Diamond, 5 albums in the 60s, so what, that's maybe 50, 60 tracks? You can't pick all of them. But we've gone through 10 of them that I think are really good. If you've got your own choices, please feel free to leave them down in the comments. I might be being a bit harsh on Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show, or maybe you think The Feel of Neil Diamond is Neil Diamond's best album of the 60s. Let me know down in the comments. And I hope you've enjoyed. I'd also like to say a big thank you for 100 subscribers on the channel. It's a really great feat. And 2 of my videos on Neil Diamond has probably propelled me to that 100 subscriber feat. So I was very tempted, and I have done another video about Neil Diamond today. Please leave a like if you'd like to see this sort of content continue, and feel free to leave any more video ideas, put my tongue back in, video ideas down in the comments. Of course, remember to subscribe for regular album reviews, top 10s. Make sure to go and watch the Velvet Gloves and Spit review, and also my first ever video on this channel. I did about 10 Neil Diamond tracks overall that maybe aren't the most known, and you definitely should go and listen to. But apart from that, I've been TIJ Music. Thank you for your company today, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye for now.